She was a student from Beijing. She came to Lyon to study, and she went to a Catholic private university. So she had grown a little bit used to instruction from a Christian institution. So it wasn't as surprising to her, all the doctrine we taught, as brand new, I suppose. She had been meeting with the Jehovah's Witnesses for a little while, and it was really cool because this was an area that my companion and I had opened by ourselves. Like, it wasn't just like two new missionaries, but the thing didn't exist before, and now we were opening it. We had no things really to go on, no area book that former missionaries had left behind. And so we were really starting from square one, and we decided that was at least worth a shot on our first day there, to go to this big square in the middle of Lyon called Belcourt. And Belcourt Square is filled with people, and the roads that attach to Belcourt Square are filled with stores. And so there's all kinds of people coming and going, and we just talked to almost everyone we could, almost everyone we passed. And every time, we wouldn't deviate too far from the actual main square. We'd walk down the roads with the stores, but we would never deviate too far from the main square. So we just kind of, when we got to a street corner, we might say a little prayer and decide where Heavenly Father wanted us to go. And so we'd both stop after the prayer and feel like we need to turn right. So we turn right. And we'd keep talking to people that would blow us off right away and not be interested. And we were beginning to wonder, like, several hours of this, we were beginning to wonder, like, are we doing something wrong? Are we not guided by the Spirit right now? Because we're taking these turns that the Lord is telling us to take, and have not bumped into anyone that is even remotely interested at all. And so we prayed one last time. We're getting a little bit discouraged. We prayed one last time, and we decided we were on one of the roads. We decided to go back the way we came and cross through the main square kind of diagonally from one corner to another, just one more time. And so we did, and we ran into this Chinese girl whom I stopped at. And obviously, as a Chinese missionary, like, you see a Chinese person, you definitely do not let them go by without talking to you. And so one thing about being a Chinese missionary is that they love to speak Chinese with you in France, because they don't get very many opportunities to do that. So they run into a guy who looks European who can speak Chinese, and they get really excited. So obviously I started talking to her, and she, as was to be expected, she got really excited that I could speak Chinese, and she was just really, really glad to stop and talk to us. And she had been walking home from school the same way every day for several years, but she told us later on that she was inspired to take a different way home that day. And looking back, obviously, spiritual hindsight is 20/20. Looking back, you realize that we were guided that whole time, and we did run into her, because we were both inspired to kind of connect at that one point. And so the whole time we had been praying to find someone who's looking for the gospel, you know what I mean? And that's the kind of terminology we use, like, Heavenly Father, help us find somebody who's looking. And we asked her if she has any beliefs, kind of expecting her to answer like most Chinese people do and be like, no beliefs. And she did answer in that way, but she was like, no, but I'm looking. And so we were just like, we kind of were like, bingo. And that was a light bulb moment for us, that Heavenly Father was guiding us the whole time when she said those words, like, I'm looking. We set up an appointment to meet with her that Sunday. She showed up right on time. She was very punctual every time. Like, she was one of those very rare investigators that is committed and never skipped a lesson. And so that was a good proof for us that she was interested and dedicated. And at first, she didn't believe a whole lot of it. In fact, she was quite skeptical about, especially the plan of salvation. That was something that was hard for her to get a handle on, because it was all invisible, like, there's an afterlife, but you can't see it. We had a life before this, you can't see it. It's kind of hard for her. But what she did like was the commandments. And so we told her, that Heavenly Father, we told her, I think it was in the first lesson, that Heavenly Father has these commandments. And when we live them, our lives get better and they improve. And she was like, tell me about these commandments. And she didn't really want to hear the whole plan of salvation, restoration stories just yet. She wanted to hear about the commandments. And so it wasn't necessarily the approach that I've that I usually would take to teach an investigator about the commandments right off, but she was interested to learn about that. So we gave her a list of the commandments. We explained them very briefly what they were, and she definitely had a hard time living some of the commandments in her life at that point. And she, deep down, she knew that that was what was making her kind of unhappy and feel emptiness inside. And so every time she'd follow a new commandment, it would be really cool to see the light on her face when she would come into a new lesson. You know, she'd be like, her attitude going into it would be like, I'll try. Like, I'm going to do this for 2 weeks. I'm going to see if my life gets better. If it doesn't, then you missionaries are frauds, basically. And so we tell her, okay, Liu Jing, you know, like you need to get rid of coffee. She drank a lot of coffee, and so she took all the coffee she had in her house. She gave it away to her neighbors. She came back the next lesson. She's like, you know, ever since I gave up coffee, I just feel so good. I have this great feeling, and I have more energy and more, you know, optimism right now. And I can't really explain it, but I feel great. And then we'd be like, okay, you know, like that's what happens when you follow the commandments. And now the next thing you need to do is start praying every day and reading your scriptures. And she'd be like, oh, that's not really going to do anything, but I'll try it. She was willing to try, always willing to try. And so she came back a couple lessons later, and she's like, you know, I've been praying like morning and night for a week, and I just feel so good. Like I feel great. And you could see that the atonement was changing her and changing her life. She had a few obstacles to overcome. She had a boyfriend at the time that was against the church, and that kind of became her last barrier between her and baptism, was that boyfriend. And very much, she just prayed for a way to help her follow the law of chastity. And she was very much skeptical that the law of chastity was a real commandment and that it would really help her in her life. But right after she prayed, like the next day, that she'd be able to follow the law of chastity, her boyfriend broke it off quite unexpectedly. And that was the first time she saw a real answer to her prayers come, I think. And she took that to be a sign from our Heavenly Father, and so did us missionaries, because she did not expect it at all for them to break up like that. But now she said basically to us, she's like, I have no more excuses. You know what I mean? Like, I follow these commandments, and I've been taught by you guys it was about 6 months now. And I feel really good ever since meeting you guys. I feel like my life has improved so much. And now that Heavenly Father has actually answered my prayers and spoken to me, I'm starting to believe the rest of this stuff too, that He's actually there and that He loves me and that I'm important to Him. And after that, it was just like a little bit of time to fortify that testimony she had. And she was baptized after 6 months and remains active to this day. And she was just a really, really cool learning experience for me also. Like, this is what conversion kind of looks like. This is what a heart that gets changed looks like, because we saw a huge change in her in a 6 month time to, you know, not living barely any commandments to living all of them, and how much happier she became and how many more friends she made. It was just a wonderful to see that light of our Heavenly Father come into her life.